Imagine a picture-perfect town, like something out of a movie, like one of those quiet suburbs, Bolingbrook, Illinois.
Yeah.
And in this town, you have Drew Peterson, a respected police officer living a seemingly normal life. But then, like a plot twist you'd never see coming,
Right.
his life takes a dark turn. Multiple marriages, whispers of domestic abuse, and then tragedy hits. His third wife, Kathleen Savio, is found dead in a bathtub.
Oh, wow.
It was initially ruled an accident, but years later, his fourth wife, Stacy, just vanishes,
That's crazy.
leaving behind her young children and a whole lot of unanswered questions. And it had everyone wondering, was this just a string of really unfortunate events, or was there something more sinister going on?
Had to be.
Yeah, right. Welcome to CrimePod Castle's Twisted Crime series.
Yeah.
We're diving deep into the Drew Peterson case, a story that's captivated so many of you. And we're going to untangle the events, the evidence, and the psychology that made this story so unforgettable.
You know what really gets me about this case is how it just shatters that image of normalcy. You have Drew Peterson, a police officer, a figure of authority, someone you'd think you could trust.
Right.
But behind that facade, there were always these whispers, these allegations of a much darker side.
It's almost like a classic tale of deception, right?
Exactly.
He had this public persona of a respectable law enforcement officer, someone there to protect and serve.
Right.
But then you start digging into his personal life, and whoa, a disturbing pattern emerges.
Yeah.
4 marriages, each one marked by accusations of domestic abuse. It really makes you think, did his badge, did that somehow shield him from closer scrutiny?
It's a question that needs asking, for sure. Power dynamics always play a huge role in these types of cases. His position as a police officer might have made it really difficult for his wives to come forward, to be heard and believed.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it for a second.
Uh.
Accusing a police officer, especially back then, that's a scary thing. There could be serious consequences.
Oh, totally.
And tragically for Kathleen Savio, that fear became her reality. Let's talk about her case. Her death in 2004, initially ruled an accident. But even then, there were red flags. A gash on her head, a dry bathtub. Things just didn't add up.
No, not at all. The initial investigation definitely leaves you with more questions than answers. Kathleen had told friends and family how scared she was of Drew, even expressed worries about her own safety.
It's heartbreaking.
I know. And sadly, those warnings, they were ignored. It really makes you wonder if those early signs were dismissed because of Drew's job as a police officer. Did his authority somehow give him an air of credibility that he didn't deserve?
That's a chilling thought to consider. Imagine being Kathleen, living with that fear, feeling like no one's listening.
Yeah.
It's a stark reminder of how societal perceptions, especially back then, could impact how domestic violence allegations were treated, especially when the accused had a position of power.
Yeah, that's a powerful point. It's like there was this reluctance to believe that someone in a position of authority could be capable of something so awful.
Right.
And that kind of thinking can have devastating consequences, as we clearly see in this case.
This tragedy just underscores how important it is to take every single allegation of domestic abuse seriously. Yeah. It doesn't matter who the perpetrator is. What matters is believing those who come forward and creating a safe space for them to share their experiences without judgment or disbelief.
I couldn't agree more. It's about time we stopped giving certain people the benefit of the doubt just because of their position or status.
Exactly. We need to listen to survivors and take action to protect them. Hashtag TTS, The Deep Dive, episode 2025 AD103, part 2 of 3.
And the story doesn't end there. 3 years later, Stacy vanishes, and suddenly everyone's looking back at Kathleen's death with a whole new perspective.
It's like Stacy's disappearance ripped the mask right off.
Yeah.
All those whispers and allegations that weren't just rumors anymore. Now you have this young woman, just 19 years old, married to a man 30 years older, and she had told her friends about Drew's controlling behavior, her fears, and then she's gone.
Poof.
Just like that. You can't ignore the similarities to Kathleen's case.
Absolutely not. And that age difference between Drew and Stacy adds another layer to it, don't you think? A young woman new to marriage, maybe isolated from her support network, and married to this guy with a history of alleged abuse and a badge that gives him a certain level of power.
It's terrifying to even think about. How many red flags were missed? How many warnings were ignored? Maybe even dismissed as just a young wife being overly worried.
It's a scary thought.
And this time, the spotlight was on full blast. Drew Peterson became front-page news, and the public wanted answers.
Oh, yeah. The pressure on law enforcement was immense. They had to untangle this whole web of suspicion, reopen a case that was already closed, and try to solve a missing person case without a body.
And all under the watchful eye of the media and the public.
It was a high-stakes investigation, for sure.
They exhumed Kathleen's body, and that became a turning point in the whole case.
A second autopsy showed that her death wasn't an accident after all, it was a homicide. It changed everything. Drew Peterson was now the prime suspect. The forensic evidence, all the circumstantial evidence, and the parallels between Kathleen and Stacy's cases, it all pointed to him.
It's like a puzzle where every piece of evidence, every witness statement, every time Drew's story changed, it just added another layer to the picture.
And in the end, those pieces formed a very clear picture.
I remember following this case, I was glued to the news. It was constant coverage, speculation, the hope that Stacy might still be found alive, and then the growing feeling that something terrible had happened.
It was hard to look away.
The trial was intense. The prosecution had to build their case without Stacy's body, relying on circumstantial evidence, witness testimonies, and the findings from Kathleen's second autopsy.
And Drew's defense team? They stuck to his innocence, saying he was just a victim of bad press.
Can you imagine what the families were going through? Reliving those painful memories, seeing the man who allegedly hurt their loved ones, having to face the uncertainty of not knowing what happened to Stacy. The emotional toll must have been immense.
Absolutely. And not having Stacy's body adds another layer of complexity. It's hard to get closure when you don't know for sure what happened.
Even with all that, the conviction of Drew Peterson for Kathleen's murder sent a powerful message.
It showed that no one is above the law, even those who wear a badge, and it showed the importance of seeking justice even when it seems impossible.
And it highlighted something we've been talking about all along. We have to believe those who come forward with allegations of abuse, no matter who the accused is. Hashtag TTS The Deep Dive, episode 2025-0103, part 3 of 3.
This is one of those cases that really sticks with you, doesn't it? Makes you wonder how someone could live a double life like that for so long, how the people closest to him could be so completely fooled, and how a system that's supposed to protect us could fail so miserably.
Yeah, you can't help but think about all that. It forces us to look at some uncomfortable truths, about power and manipulation and how domestic abuse can hide in plain sight.
The Peterson case, it really became a symbol, didn't it?
Absolutely. It sparks so many conversations about believing victims, recognizing the warning signs, and holding abusers accountable no matter who they are.
For sure.
What about the community, though? Bolingbrook.
Yeah.
It was this place where people felt safe, and then suddenly it's in the national spotlight, forever linked to this dark and twisted story.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine the impact something like this has on a community like that. It shakes people's trust, especially in authority figures. It creates this feeling of unease and leaves everyone wondering if they really knew their neighbors.
Yeah.
It's a wound that takes a long time to heal.
It reminds you that these stories, the ones that grab our attention and keep us up at night, they're not just entertainment. They're real lives, real pain, real consequences.
Exactly. We can talk about the legal side of things, the evidence, the psychology of the perpetrator, but we can't forget about the human cost. Kathleen and Stacy were mother's daughter's friends. Their lives were cut short, and their absence leaves a hole that can never be filled.
Their stories are a powerful reminder that domestic abuse can happen anywhere, to anyone. It doesn't discriminate. We all need to be vigilant to recognize the warning signs and to support those who might be experiencing abuse.
It's so true. And silence, that's often the abuser's biggest ally. The more we talk about this, the more we create a culture where victims feel safe coming forward, the better our chances of breaking the cycle of abuse.
That's a great point. Well, if you're interested in learning more about this case or exploring other true crime stories, be sure to check out CrimePod Castle's YouTube channel. We've got in-depth analyses, interviews, documentaries, all sorts of stuff that digs into the criminal justice system and the human stories behind the headlines.
They do a fantastic job over there. Their content is a must-watch for any true crime fan.
So subscribe to CrimePod Castle and join us as we delve into the darker side of humanity and the never-ending pursuit of justice. Share these stories with your friends and family because awareness is key. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay safe.